Revealed, 10 spine-chilling Alaskan horror stories that expose cursed secrets and haunted legends. In the heart of a remote Alaskan town, darkness wrapped itself around every shivering soul like a cold, wet blanket. Here, the sun vanished for months, making a mockery of the people left behind. It was in this eerie expanse of frozen despair that Sarah, a single mother with 2 kids and a missing husband, sought refuge. But the shadows had secrets. Old legends whispered about cursed souls and haunted places, stories that clawed their way into Sarah's waking nightmares. Nights in Sarah's new home echoed with the rustling of branches scratching against the walls, yet the true horror lay behind the thin boards and the peeling paint. Strange, soft knocks would echo through the attic, followed by muffled cries that made her heart race. She wanted to convince herself it was just the wind, or perhaps the sounds were the ghosts of her past, a past she was desperate to escape. But with the town's chilling reputation, every knock traced chilled fingers along her spine. After a long day of work at the local diner, gossip hung in the air. The kind smiles from the townsfolk felt fragile, like a flickering bulb ready to burst. Her children were slowly shrinking into themselves, shadows of their former joyful selves. Often, she caught them staring blankly into corners, as if something wicked lurked there, invisible to her eyes. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. That evening, just as twilight swallowed the last remnants of light, Sarah heard a loud thud from the attic. Her heart thundered. The oppressive silence was broken only by the persistent knocking. She climbed the creaking stairs hesitantly, resolving to confront whatever nightmare haunted her home. As she pushed open the attic door, the air grew thick and heavy, suffocating her with an ancient fear. Battered boxes lined the walls, but one stood out. It beckoned her with darkness, a hidden passageway. As she squeezed herself through the narrow opening, an unsettling chill gushed around her. The abandoned cabin beyond revealed remnants of life long extinguished, decaying furniture, faded photographs, and a strange collection of artifacts that whispered secrets. Each object bore witness to twisted folklore, legends of the town's past that made her skin crawl. Here, history turned sinister, and with every bone-chilling realization, Sarah's grip on reality loosened. Her children talked less, their eyes dull and haunted, like fireflies snuffed out on the darkest nights. The community was no longer friendly, whispers of her husband's fate twisted around her like a noose. As the chilling legends surged, she could feel their shadows closing in, gripping at her throat. The air crackled with danger, the town's buried horrors emerging like old bones. Just as she found herself spiraling deeper into this nightmare, Sarah felt the walls press in on her. The voices grew louder, echoing names, her husband's among them. Panic seized her. The soft laughter of her son tapped at the corners of her mind. It felt like a warning. The darkness loomed closer, and she realized, she faced a terrible choice: flee the cursed town or confront the horrors that tied her family to a fate sealed long ago. A cold wind swept through the attic, shutting the door with a haunting thud. The last whispered echoes of lost souls lingered in the air, asking if she would surrender to the dark or fight her way back to the light. The shadows intensified as Sarah's breath quickened, each inhale laced with the stale air of forgotten despair. The attic felt like a living thing, pulsating with an energy that was almost tangible, constricting around her as she peered deeper into the hidden cabin. Something sinister lurked in those artifacts, each one a time capsule of sorrow and pain. She could almost hear them whispering, begging to be seen, to be understood. The air was colder now, biting at her skin. She stumbled backward, heart racing as the door behind her suddenly creaked open, revealing her 2 children standing on the threshold. Their eyes were wide, shimmering with a mix of fear and something else, something that made her stomach twist. "Mom, we heard you screaming," her daughter said, voice quivering. "No," Sarah exclaimed, taking a step toward them but hesitating as she noticed the unnatural stillness in the attic. You shouldn't be up here. It's dangerous. The words felt hollow, a feeble warning against the tide of darkness rising around them. Mom, let us go home, her son urged, grabbing her hand. A panic gripped her heart. Home. This was home, wasn't it? But with each passing moment, the connection to this place felt more tenuous. Was it the house that was haunted, or had the weight of the town's secrets begun to seep into her family? As she turned to face the cabin one last time, a flicker of movement caught her eye. It was a photograph, half covered by dust on a rickety table. The figures in the picture seemed to twist and morph under her gaze. Shadows of faces long buried seemed to stretch toward her, pleading and furious. She barely recognized the man in the photo. A flicker of recognition sparked within her. Was it her husband? Self-doubt clawed at her as she moved closer. The moment of revelation was shattered by a furious flapping of the attic window cover, something heavy slamming against the glass, as if trying desperately to get in. Her children gasped. Mom! Her daughter shrieked, eyes wide as the shadows danced around them like dark tendrils. Screams of the past echoed in the air, twisting her thoughts with doubt. The whispers of lost souls tangled in her mind. Sarah, run! A heavy voice boomed, tremors shaking the rafters above as the room spun with a dreadful energy. It gripped her like icy hands around her throat, dragging her toward the edge of sanity. Instinct kicked in, and before she could question it, she pulled her children close, pushing past the oppressive darkness. They bolted down the stairs, the muffled cries from the attic chasing them like hounds in the night. The walls felt alive, shifting and closing in, as if the house were trying to swallow them whole. The laughter from her son turned frantic, dissolving into whimpers that echoed painfully in her ears. As they burst through the front door into the snow-lined yard, darkness fell behind them, swallowing the last vestiges of light. The town loomed around her like a giant, hungry beast, the buildings seeming to lean toward them hungrily. She felt the icy breath of the legends that lived here. Their stories were alive, waiting for their chance to ensnare another family. What do we do? Her son murmured, eyes glassy with terror. The sky above was thick with ominous clouds, swirling like some great storm was on the verge of striking. The gnawing question burned in Sarah's mind: had they run far enough? Or had the cursed shadows already woven their dark fabric around their lives? But the answer wouldn't come easily. Another chill swept through the air, the very atmosphere buzzing with impending doom. They were not safe, the darkness wanted them, and it would find a way. A fear clawed at her chest, realizing their ordeal had just begun. As an eerie howl filled the air, shattering the oppressive silence, Sarah grasped her children tightly. They were not safe. Not yet. But where would the darkness lead them next? And what terrible choice awaited them in the night to come? The wind howled like a banshee, swirling snowflakes that danced against the darkened town. Sarah's heart thudded in her chest, an urgent drumbeat of fear. She scanned the dimly lit streets, her pulse racing. Every shadow seemed to twist and morph, hinting at the sinister presence that lurked just beyond sight. Mom, please, her son whispered, squeezing her hand. His voice quivered under the weight of dread, and she could see the terror etched into the lines of his young face. She bent low, trying to meet his eyes. We have to move. We can't stay here. Not in this town. Where do we go? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It felt as if the very air conspired against them, thick with tension and something darker. At that moment, a figure flickered at the edge of her vision, draped in black, just out of reach. Did you see that? She asked breathlessly. Her daughter shook her head, her eyes wide. What, Mom? What is there? She hesitated, wrestling with the urge to look again. The feeling of being watched crawled over her skin, and the shadows around them seemed to ripple, whispering secrets she couldn't comprehend. Nothing, just my imagination, she finally said, though the words tasted like ash in her mouth. In the distance, an old clock tower struck midnight, a heavy sound that resonated through the chilling silence. Each toll thudded like a warning, sending a shiver through Sarah. The world around them felt even more alive, the building starting to lean closer, like leaning ears, eager to eavesdrop on their fear. She had no idea what lay ahead, but the air shimmered with an intensity that promised something wicked, something that would not let them escape easily. As they moved through the streets, the snow crunched beneath their feet, a sound too loud in the oppressive quiet. The shadows lengthened, reaching toward them like fingers beckoning from the darkness. "Mom, we should go back," her son pleaded, glancing over his shoulder. "I don't like this place." "No," she snapped, instinctively raising her voice. She didn't understand herself, the growing unease pushed at her from every angle. They couldn't go back, not after what they had glimpsed. She needed to keep them moving, to find safety, no matter how elusive it seemed. A sudden gust of wind surged past them, swirling the snow in a frantic spiral. Her daughter shrieked as it lifted a nearby trash can, sending it clattering against the pavement. "Mom!" she cried, panic bubbling in her voice. "Stay close." Sarah grabbed their hands tighter, the warmth of their little fingers a fragile thread against the gnawing cold that seeped deeper into her bones. Children's laughter echoed through the night, but it wasn't theirs. It sent dread coursing through Sarah's veins, chilling her blood. She turned sharply, eyes darting to the source. Shadows coalesced, swirling beneath the streetlights. They moved in twisted forms, faces morphing from joy to terror, their giggles dripping with malice. "Keep moving," she shouted, adrenaline flooding her limbs as she quickened her pace. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end, the laughter grew louder, an eerie chorus that seemed to multiply, echoing around her, each haunting note intertwining with the howling wind. With every step, Sarah felt the weight of eyes watching, waiting to ensnare them in their grasp. "Faster," she urged, pulling her children to her side as fear clawed at her throat. But where would they turn? Where would they find refuge when the very shadows themselves seemed to conspire against them? As they sprinted into the swirling storm, Sarah caught a flicker of movement out of the corner of her eye. A figure stood in the distance, cloaked and still. It didn't move, it just watched, eyes glinting from the darkness like the edge of a knife. "Mom, who is that?" Her son whimpered, and she felt the pulse of dread pounding in her ears. I don't know," she breathed, her voice trembling. The figure felt wrong in a way that set off every alarm in her mind. But as they dashed away, the sound of their own breath drowned out the laughter around them, yet echoes lingered on the wind. The darkness had already marked them, and the shadows wove tighter with every heartbeat. Where had they fled? And what would come for them next? The deeper darkness held its secrets tightly, ready to unleash them. They stumbled forward, the biting cold clawing at their faces, the darkness pressing close. The streetlights fought a losing battle against the shadows, their feeble halos flickering. Just ahead, the mouth of an alley beckoned them, a darker void among the gloom. "Mom, can we hide there?" Her daughter pointed, desperation splintering her voice. The alley seemed alive, twisting shadows shifting like something breathing. Sarah hesitated, torn between fear of the open street and the uncertainty of the alley. "No," she said, shaking her head. "We need to keep moving." But as she pushed ahead, the sound of laughter escalated. Gone were the innocent giggles, now they morphed into haunting shrieks, clawing at her sanity. The air felt thick, like the very fabric of reality wavering. She could taste the bitterness of hopelessness on her tongue. "Mom," her son murmured, eyes panicked. She turned back just then, the flickering figure from moments before still standing there, watching them. A cold chill ran down her spine. The figure shifted slightly, and her heart stopped. There was something familiar about that shape, something tethering itself deep in her mind. "Run!" Sarah shouted, yanking her children along. The shadows laughed again, a cruel mockery that echoed against the brick walls around them. It was wrong, so wrong. They needed to escape the laughter, the way it twisted with every flicker of movement. They dashed past the alley entrance and entered a narrow street, the wind snatching at them. A small sign creaked above, the letters worn and nearly missing. Pine Street. A chill ran deeper. She had heard that name once, in stories, whispers of ghastly happenings that curled through the town like smoke. "What is it, Mom?" her daughter asked, sensing her sudden unease. "Just focus on me." Sarah pressed on. The shadows cast by the light almost seemed to stretch out and grasp at her legs as they hurried down the street, but it was different here. The shadows wrapped around her, closer, whispering secrets she didn't want to know. With every breath, the laughter morphed again, throatier now, mocking their terror, probing the depths of her heart with icy fingers. Then the laughter stopped, suddenly quiet. An abominable silence shrouded them. Sarah dared to glance back. The figure now stood at the mouth of the alley, closer, almost a part of the shadows now. She could see more than a silhouette. The figure was outlined in a dark, twisting substance, a cloak of eternal night. "Mommy?" her son whimpered. "Keep walking," she said. They turned a corner into another street, but something felt wrong. The air crackled, and her stomach dropped. As they moved, Sarah felt an electric sensation, as if the town itself were alive and aware, breathing down their necks. Faces began to emerge in the snow-dappled expanse, twisting and contorting like masks of despair, each one set in a grimace of hunger and thirst for something they couldn't comprehend. "Stay close," she yelled again, her voice strained now. They dashed through the streets. Every corner turned felt like entering another layer of the abyss. Ahead, a flickering light pierced the darkness. "A house!" her daughter cried. A tattered old home stood at the end of the street, its windows dark and hollow, a flickering light behind one of them. Through half-open shutters, it beckoned with an eerie glow. Would it hide them or ensnare them? "Should we go in?" Her son's small voice trembled, but the laughter returned. It echoed, swirling around them, tightening into a noose. Sarah hesitated, peering into the inky blackness of the home. Was safety within those decaying walls, or something worse? "Mom," her daughter squeezed her hand as the shadows closed in. The door loomed in front of them, chipping paint and rattling hinges. Should she take the first step? In that instant, the shadows howled their delight. Sarah was no longer sure of anything but a captured moment, a choice between darkness and the unknown. What would lie behind that door? Would it reveal their escape or only pull them deeper into the nightmare? The door creaked open slowly, a reluctant admission into the darkness. Sarah felt the chill seep deeper into her bones as an unnatural breeze brushed against her, almost as if the house exhaled. She glanced at her children, their faces pale, yet compelled by an inexplicable force. "Let us go," she whispered, and they stepped inside, the threshold passing beneath their feet like a barrier parting the living from the damned. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with the scent of decay and despair. Shadows danced wildly at the edges of the dim light, deceiving her with every flicker. Old furniture lined the walls, draped in sheets that formed grotesque shapes, remnants of lives once lived. Sarah's heart raced as her unease swelled. This place felt wrong, as if it held its breath waiting, watching. "Mom." Her daughter's voice wavered, clinging to her for reassurance. "Stay close," Sarah urged again, pressing a reassuring kiss to her daughter's forehead despite the gnawing dread clawing at her mind. As they moved deeper into the house, the laughter came again, more insistent and cruel. It echoed through the hallways, bouncing off the walls, curling around them like a snake. The walls seemed to close in, the very structure of the house becoming a beast, hungry for their fear. "Look!" Her son pointed, his voice trembling as he backed against her leg. A faded portrait hung crookedly on the wall, featuring a family that seemed to scowl. Their eyes followed Sarah and her children, filled with a depth of sorrow and malice that made her shudder. "Keep moving," she pressed on, dragging them past the portrait. Each step felt like a transgression, a defilement of some long-forgotten sanctuary. The laughter intensified, now swirling above them like a tempest, vibrating through the very floorboards. "Mom!" her daughter cried out, her small hand clutching tightly. The house groaned in response, as if it were alive, its very essence protesting their presence. Sarah felt the urge to scream but swallowed it, forcing her feet forward. They reached a door at the end of the hallway. It was ajar, a flickering light spilling from its cracked edges. "What's in there?" her son asked, eyes wide, filled with both dread and a fleeting curiosity. "I don't know," she admitted, fear dancing in her chest. A wave of heat came from beyond the door, as if something primal was breathing there, waiting for them, and then silence fell again. The laughter dissipated, replaced by a guttural growl that seemed to emanate from the very walls. Sarah swallowed hard, leaning closer to the door, heart pounding in her throat. She hesitated, her hand trembling on the knob. Everything inside her screamed to turn back, to bolt out of the house and into the night. Yet the magnetic pull of whatever lay within was insatiable. "Should we?" her daughter began, but the words turned to a whisper under the weight of their fear. With a determined twist, Sarah opened the door, the light spilling into the dim hallway like a beckoning hand. What they saw inside nearly made her heart stop. It was a room alive with the flickering shadows, filled with broken mirrors reflecting twisted faces, moments of horror frozen in time, fragments of a past that felt too wrong. There was a table at the center, laden with things that shouldn't exist: dolls that wept, cracked porcelain eyes glistening like tears. The moment Sarah stepped inside, they screamed as the shadows leaped up to envelop them, the darkness feeling alive and hungry. Suddenly, one of the mirrors cracked, and from the shards, whispers erupted, calling to them with voices they somehow recognized. The children clung to her tightly, their breaths quickening as terror painted the walls in bleak colors. Everything seemed to swirl into chaos, a vortex of the past, compelling, intoxicating. Then, from the depths of the house, a voice emerged, chillingly familiar and draped in sorrow. "Welcome home." Sarah's world tumbled as she understood, the laughter of the shadows rising to a crescendo, drawing near. Would she be able to save her children, or would they be consumed by the dark history of the house? With that thought lingering, she braced herself for the confrontation of the damned. What awaited them on the other side of their reality? As the darkness twisted around them, she realized that every answer they sought might only deepen the horror lurking within. The darkness swirled like a living thing, tightening around Sarah and her children. The atmosphere was thick, almost tangible, wrapping them in an oppressive grip. Candles flickered wildly, casting eerie shapes that flickered on the walls, and for a moment, Sarah felt as if they were being watched not just by the house but by something far older, far more malevolent. "Let us go," she urged, her voice breaking slightly, pulling her kids tighter against her. They pressed forward but could barely move, as if the shadows were clutching at their feet, anchoring them to the spot. The mirrors seemed to pulse, each crack hypnotic, drawing her gaze. It felt like drowning, the whispers echoing around them, seeping into her mind. "Sarah! Sarah!" A cacophony of voices seeped into her spirit, though she didn't recognize them. The dolls on the table, their eyes glistening, appeared to stare back with flesh-like malice. For a fleeting moment, she swore one blinked, and there was a slight movement disturbing and mesmerizing. Their mouths curled into smiles that hinted at sinister secrets. The darkness responded to this concept of joy with a rumble, and shadows dove closer, eager for the slightest hint of fear. "Mom! I'm scared," her son whimpered, pressing against her tightly, almost clawing into her flesh. She could feel his heartbeat through his small frame, a rhythm pounding louder than her own. "Shoo, it's okay," she murmured, heart racing, but doubt gnawed at her. There was nothing okay about this place. The very air vibrated with despair, a deep cry from the house's tortured soul. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from behind them, echoing as a piece of furniture toppled, sending waves of resonating terror through the room. Sarah spun around, but the door slammed shut, trapping them inside. The sound of wood against wood resounded like a funeral dirge in her ears. They were trapped. "Let us out!" she screamed, panic rising in her throat. The children shrieked beside her, and the walls seemed to close in, the room shrinking. The shadows shifted, swirling faster. The fractured mirrors now reflected twisted versions of their faces, eyes wide and filled with terror, mouths open in silent screams. Sarah's heart raced as she felt sick, the nausea of fear wrapping around her like a noose. Then with a crack, the largest mirror split wide open, revealing a dark portal that seemed to beckon them forward. In that moment, the whispers rose, flooding her with clarity. They weren't just voices, they were stories. Memories. Fragments of a life trapped in these walls. "Sarah," the familiar voice came again, softer this time, almost seductive. "You belong here. You are one of us." Sarah fought the compulsion rising within her. No. The thought rang through her mind, a desperate plea for the stability of reality. But the pull was overwhelming. Images flashed in her mind, her own childhood, laughter echoing through rooms that felt so similar, a fleeting glimpse of a face that betrayed nothing but warmth. With a primal roar, the darkness surged forward. Windows rattled, the candle flames bent dangerously low before exploding with a blinding light. The dolls began to giggle, and their laughter melded with a chorus of screams. "Mommy!" Her daughter tugged fiercely at her, drawing her back from the swirling mass that threatened to drag them in. Sarah blinked hard, regaining her footing. "We have to leave," she yelled, pushing through the chaos. With every ounce of strength, she fought the magnetic pull of the room. Then, the ground beneath her shook violently as the whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar. "Stay! Stay! Stay!" But a light flickered within her, a remnant of determination. She turned, finding the doorknob, and with all her strength, twisted it fiercely. The door flew open with a ferocious roar, revealing a darkened hallway beyond. They bolted, hearts galloping as they dashed through the doorway. But just as they reached the threshold, a pale, skeletal hand shot out from the shadows, grasping her ankle. "Sarah!" It screamed, an echo of her own name. Reverberating through the air as those haunting whispers faded into shrieks of fury, would they escape the dark grip of the house, or would the haunting legacy draw them in forever? As they fled into the unknown corridor, the house trembled, malicious laughter returning, more insistent than ever. Time was running out, and the darkness would not let them go easily. What waited for them in the hallway beyond? The suffocating blackness seemed to laugh at their attempts to flee. They ran, Sarah leading the way with the children clinging to her sides. The hallway stretched out before them, long and narrow, bathed in a thick haze. Each step felt like wading through mud, dragging them back toward the living terror they had just escaped. Sarah's breath came in sharp, desperate gasps as she risked a glance over her shoulder. What was that? Her son whispered, his voice trembling. She didn't answer. Behind them, the echo of laughter danced off the walls, echoing unnervingly as if mocking their struggles. The skeletal hand retracted, no longer grasping her ankle, but that didn't diminish the feeling of dread. Whatever had been in that room wasn't gone. Dim light flickered to life overhead, casting shadows that twisted and warped like writhing serpents. As they ran further down the hallway, images began to flash on the walls, the fragmented reflections from the mirrors now flooding her memory with disturbing clarity. A collection of family portraits hung, faces smiling eerily back at them. She recognized them all. No, Sarah gasped, backing against the wall, her heart racing with the horror of belated recognition. The portrait of a little girl, her own daughter before her eyes. How could that be? The framing felt familiar, like fragments of a long-forgotten dream now clawing its way back. She moved closer, entranced. "Mom!" Her daughter pulled on her arm, the tug snapping Sarah back from the brink of madness. "Don't look at them." The words shook her. The momentary fixation shattered as another voice broke through the fog. "Leave us." The plea was sorrowful, a chilling echo that chilled the air. "Stay away." With urgency, she shook herself free and continued running, urging the children forward. But her heart was heavy with the weight of the memories. The laughter faded, replaced by another wind that whispered sweetly in her ear, promising warmth and safety if she just turned back. "What is happening, Mommy?" Her daughter's voice quivered. Sarah couldn't answer. The hallway twisted unnaturally, the ceiling dipping towards them like the claws of some great beast. Each door they passed was slightly ajar, shadowy figures shifting behind the threshold. The children would not see those horrors, not if she could help it. Faster! She urged as they rounded a corner, the sound of their feet echoing in the narrowing space. But suddenly, the corridor opened into a larger room, dark but inviting. An ornate chandelier hung from the ceiling, flickering softly like a beacon amidst the darkness. "Stay close." The moment they stepped into the room, the door slammed shut behind them. The resounding thud echoed ominously, sealing them in. Sarah whipped around, panic rising again, but what caught her attention was what lay in the center of the room, a table set for a feast, shimmering with unexplainable allure. Plates filled with food, more than they could ever consume, and at each place was a doll, identical to her children. They smiled, beckoning them to join the macabre celebration. The temptation was suffocating, as if the very air buzzed with their promises. The whispers grew louder, secrets spilling forth from every corner of the room. "You're just like us, join us." "No." The word tore from her throat, desperate. "We have to get out." Her heart hammered against her ribcage, driving her forward. Sprinting toward another door, she yanked it open, but it led to a staircase that spiraled down into unfathomable darkness. The thread of life beyond that door fell away, and she felt the cold grip of despair tightening around her once more. The basement. It'll lead to the outside, she exclaimed, knowing they had little choice. As they dove into the staircase, the walls pulsed with dark energy, and the sound of laughter erupted behind them. This wasn't an escape. It was an invitation. What awaited them below? The shadows loomed, hungry for souls. Would they uncover the secrets buried deep in the house's heart, or would they join the whispers, forever lost? The stairs spiraled down like a wound-up spring, each step sending echoes of dread reverberating around them. Sarah grasped her children tightly, her heart racing as the darkness seemed to close in around them. The walls felt alive, shifting and contracting as if they were limiting her escape. There was a sense of wrongness in the air, thick and suffocating. "Mommy," her daughter whimpered, her small voice barely a whisper. Sarah forced a smile, though it trembled at the edges. "Just a little further." "We'll be okay," she managed, but the words felt hollow. They reached the bottom, and the air changed, growing colder, heavier. A faint light flickered in the distance, revealing a cavernous basement, filled with shapes that blended into the shadows. Each twist and turn of the room seemed to echo the same mantra: "Stay." Sarah glanced back at the staircase, a momentary temptation to turn and run back. But the memory of the table, the dolls so sinister and inviting, rooted her in place. "Look for a door," she urged, pushing her fear aside. The children split off, searching with frantic determination. A sudden crash echoed behind them, and Sarah whipped her head around, heart pounding in her chest. The laughter returned, haunting and cruel, filling the space with a cacophony that made her skin crawl. It reverberated as if it were a living thing, filled with all the cries of torment they had heard before. "Mom!" her son screamed, stumbling back toward her. "There's something in the shadows." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Shadows shifted unnaturally, forming indistinct figures that lurked at the fringes of their vision. She darted toward her son, grabbing his arm just as a low growl resonated from the darkness. "Run!" she shouted, pulling him back. But with every movement, the shadows coiled closer, stretching out hungry, grasping fingers. They found a door, small and rotted, barely hanging on its hinges. With shaking hands, Sarah flung it open, revealing a narrow passage illuminated by a flickering overhead bulb. The space felt tight and oppressive, but it seemed like a sanctuary next to the horrors they had just witnessed. "Get in," she urged, ushering the children forward. They stepped inside, but as Sarah turned to follow, she felt something cold and clammy wrap around her ankle. She yanked her foot away, but it was too late. The laughter crescendoed, and suddenly, the door slammed shut, trapping her inside. Panic surged. She pounded on the door, but the sound of her fist striking against the wood was drowned out by the mocking laughter that echoed around her. "Mommy!" The children's voices strained through the door, their fear palpable. "Hold on, I'll find you." Sarah screamed, desperately seeking something, anything that would break her from this prison. With trembling hands, she fumbled through the darkness, her heart racing wildly. The air thickened, solidifying around her in a suffocating hug. She could hear whispers now, soft and seductive, curling around her ears. "Join us," they beckoned. "Stay with us forever." A flicker of light caught her eye. It came from the corner where shadows writhed, almost alive. It was a mirror, standing tall and pristine amidst the decay, the surface rippling like water disturbed. Drawn to it, Sarah approached, her own reflection twisting and swirling, morphing into grotesque shapes that bore no resemblance to her own. "Look closer," the voices urged, growing louder, penetrating. As she leaned in, the glass shimmered, revealing a glimpse of her children, still in the dark basement, their eyes wide with fear. "Mom!" they cried, reaching out as if they could bridge the distance. With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah slammed her hands against the mirror, and the laughter drowned out her scream. The shadows twisted into forms that spooled dread through her veins. Could she break free from the pull of the mirror? Was it a way out, or another trap inviting her deeper into despair? As she contemplated, she felt another hand wrap around her ankle, a cold grip pulling her backward. What new horrors awaited Sarah and her children? The darkness beckoned them all, and time was slipping away like sand. The grip tightened around Sarah's ankle, icy fingers curling in a desperate bid to hold her down. Panic surged anew within her. She jerked her leg, fighting against the unseen force, but the shadows only tightened their grasp. The laughter intensified, shrill and mocking, drowning everything else in its cruel symphony. "Mommy!" The sound of her children's frantic voices ricocheted in her mind, sharpening her resolve. She couldn't let them become part of this nightmare. They needed her. Gritting her teeth, Sarah leaned into the mirror. The surface quivered, sending ripples of distorted images flashing before her eyes, an endless parade of grim faces twisted in agony. A reflection of what could be. "Please, show me a way out," she shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. The laughter subsided only for a moment, allowing the whispers to seep back into her thoughts. "Join us." It wrapped around her like a warm blanket, but there was nothing warm about it. Suddenly, a face emerged from the glass, familiar yet grotesque, its eyes reflecting agony and despair. It was her own, transformed by the shadows, lips curled into a sinister smile. "You can stay, Sarah, no more fear. Join us," her reflection coaxed, each word dripping with false sincerity. "No!" she screamed, stumbling backward. In that instant, the grip on her ankle loosened. Seizing the moment, she bolted, breathless, searching for a way to her children. The door behind her remained tightly shut, shrouded in darkness, mocking her attempts to reach the light. She darted back toward the corner where the mirror stood, feeling her heart race as shadows grew thicker, curling around her like smoke. The sense of dread clung to her skin, damp and heavy. She reached for the mirror once more, desperate to see through the twisted images, pleading for a sign. That a flicker illuminated her path. There it was, an open space beyond the chaos, a door hiding in the swirling shadows. It beckoned her with a desperate hope, but as she took a step toward it, the shadows writhed, blocking her path like a wall of unyielding terror. "Mom!" The cries of her children pierced the haze, and her heart twisted with grief and fear. Time was slipping away. "Hold on!" she shouted, her voice raw. The shadows recoiled at her determination, but she felt them surge again, trying to pull her back into their dark embrace. In the corner of her eye, she noticed the mirror shimmer and pulse, an uncanny light flickered within it. It no longer showed just her reflection, but an image of her children, moving, fighting against an unseen force in the basement beyond. Their tiny hands banged against the cold surface, their faces twisting with panic. "Help us!" they wailed, reality slipping away before her eyes. The mirror seemed to inhale their cries, growing more substantial, consuming every ounce of light surrounding it. She was losing them. She could feel it in her bones. Without thinking, she lunged forward, determined to break free of the threshold that bound her. She raised her arms, ready to shatter the deceptive glass. The moment felt eternal, time distorting, everything hanging in a balance of soul-crushing emotion and raw urgency. Just as her fingertips grazed the surface, a howl erupted from the shadows, raw and primal. It echoed through the basement, drowning out her thoughts. Cold air rushed past her, filling her lungs as everything around her seemed to shift. But in that space of impending doom, Sarah caught a fleeting image, a twisted, dark figure lurking just beyond the door she had spotted. "Mommy!" A voice cried, breaking the tension. It was her son. He could feel her despair, she could feel him. She hesitated, frozen between two worlds. Could she save them? Or would she be lost forever to the very shadows that taunted her? The mirror shimmered, reflecting her frozen moment. What choice would she make? As the shadows advanced, she prepared to leap again, but the floorboards creaked ominously, and she felt a chill on the back of her neck. Something darker was awakening. Could she still turn back? The door behind her groaned. The laughter returned, more sinister this time, as if time itself was laughing at her predicament. With determination filling her with fire, she let out a cry, a blend of fear and fury. Thrusting her hands toward the mirror, would it shatter, or would she find herself consumed whole? The moment Sarah's hands connected with the mirror's surface, something incredible happened. The glass responded to her urgency, rippling with a surge of energy that blazed like a wildfire. The laughter around her faded into a piercing silence, and for just an instant, hope shimmered within the darkness. With a deafening crack, the mirror shattered, shards exploding outward like a burst of stars. Each piece reflected fragments of reality, creating a chaotic tapestry of images, her children's faces, obscured with fear, suddenly crystal clear amidst the discord. "Mommy!" Their voices cried out, accompanied by the staccato sound of palms banging against wood. Sarah felt every ounce of their panic catalyze a fierce protectiveness in her chest. In this moment, she wasn't just fighting for survival, she was fighting for their very souls. Ignoring the shards of glass now pooled around her feet, she rushed toward the remnants of the door that had been her prison. Yet, chaos erupted. The shadows lunged forward, thick and angry, swirling like a tempest, eager for retribution. But Sarah had the fire of desperation in her veins. She threw herself against the door, battered but relentless, forcing it open. As the door swung wide, a rush of icy wind surged past her, as if the house, and all that clung to it, were trying to keep her locked away. The transition from the house's grip to the cold air outside smacked her with an almost painful clarity. The cold whites of the snow hit her in sharp contrast to the damp suffocating heat inside. It was a shock to her senses, and it lit a flame within her. "Run! To the clock tower!" she yelled, grabbing hold of her children's hands, pulling them urgently into motion. The town loomed ahead, but there seemed to be a beacon of light. The clock tower, its familiar silhouette now felt like a promise. Together they sprinted through the thickening snow, their breath visible in the frigid air, mingling. Laughter, both cruel and distant, seemed to echo from all around, but their synchronized heartbeat drowned it out, each pulse reminding them that, together, they were stronger than the shadows. As the clock tower grew closer, Sarah's thoughts raced. She remembered stories of how the bell was once said to ward off evil, protecting the town from lost souls wanting to tether themselves to the living. She clung to that as they hastened toward it, every ounce of fear transformed into determination. "Keep going, she urged, feeling her children's grip tighten around her fingers, their resolve merging with her own. They reached the tower, which felt sturdy and steadfast against the encroaching horror behind them. With trembling knees, they threw themselves through the door, falling to the ground in a tangled heap of energy, laughter, and cries of relief surfacing amidst the chaos. Inside, the clock tower was filled with dust motes dancing in the thin beams of fading light. "Look!" her daughter exclaimed, pointing toward the swinging pendulum, which cast wavering shadows on the walls. "Maybe it can help." "Maybe it can help," Sarah repeated, heart thrumming with a mixture of hope and despair. She wanted to believe it could. But in that moment, she heard the laughter again, louder and more aggressive, thrumming at the walls, clawing to breach the seams of their sanctuary. "We can't stay here," Sarah exclaimed, jumping to her feet, dragging her children with her toward the base of the clock mechanisms. "Can we ring the bell?" her son asked breathlessly, eyes wide with apprehension. "Yes," Sarah said, her mind swirling with feverish clarity. The large, bell-shaped frame loomed before them heavy and antique, but it pulsed with promise. Together. We pulled together. With all the strength they could muster, the three of them grabbed hold of the thick ropes and pulled. A deep rumble echoed through the tower, traveling up to the bell, sending tremors that they could feel under their feet. And then it rang, a deep, resonating sound that echoed through the walls, a powerful statement against the darkness that threatened to overwhelm them. Each clang sent shockwaves through the heavy stillness, cutting the laughter into pieces. The vibration sent the shadows screeching back, momentarily suspended in the press of sound. The air thickened, shimmering as the waves of energy emanated from the bell. "Keep going," Sarah shouted, feeling adrenaline rush through her like a piercing current. They pulled harder, ringing out against the relentless darkness outside and within, with one final deafening toll. The power of connection, the love of a mother and her children, exploded like daylight through the deep night, shattering the curse that clung to the town like a shroud. The shadows recoiled, screaming, as if the sound itself were burning them away. And then, silenced as the echoes faded into nothing, the world felt lighter. The air felt free, unburdened. They stood, panting in the stillness that remained, staring into one another's eyes, now filled with tears and relief. The darkness had receded, but the scars remained. "Are we safe?" her daughter whispered, her eyes bright with remnants of fear. Sarah pulled them close, taking in the warmth of their bodies against the chill, the love anchoring her. "For now," she replied softly, voice shaking but steady. "We will always have each other." As the three of them embraced, a light began to spill into the clock tower, illuminating the dust swirling in the air. Behind them, the shadows were banished, drifting away into obscurity like bad dreams chased away by dawn, and with that, Sarah realized that they hadn't just escaped the house, the town, they had transcended the darkness that once threatened to engulf them, their bond stronger than the curse attempting to tear them apart. "Let us go home," she whispered, holding tight as they stepped back out into the world reborn. Together as they ventured into the growing light, the cold crisp air mingling with the warmth of their embrace, Sarah knew returning to the town was no longer a sinister journey. They would face whatever came next together. But first, darkness had to be unpacked. Those secrets wouldn't vanish just because they returned to daylight. They would heal, together, past the memories that haunted them. It was a long road, but now it was shared, a journey toward redemption. Where would it lead them next? Only time would unravel the tales they still had yet to uncover. Now, dear friends, if you want more stories that will chill and thrill you, this is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive tales. It's crucial for the channel's growth. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and let it know you want more spine-tingling content. I want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. Your voice matters, and don't wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. It's time to spread the word. True fans like you understand the importance of supporting the channel in every way possible.